This is America's Forum on Newsmax TV. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., let's focus on Afghanistan a little bit. U.S. officials, of course, are anxious to look past Afghan President Hamid Karzai after more than 7 million Afghanis went to the polls over the weekend to elect a new president. And Obama administration officials say the success of the elections and the impressive turnout in the face of the Taliban are a major step forward for the Afghan people. But the Taliban, of course, is still active, and they're also sending mixed messages. They have claimed responsibility for an attack in southern Afghanistan, according to officials, but they've also denied responsibility for another attack that hit a NATO convoy. The Taliban blamed international forces for that roadside bombing, saying foreign forces were trying to hurt the reputation of the Islamic militant movement by making it look like the Taliban were killing civilians.
Well, now I think I've heard it all, John. The Taliban worried about its image? Wow, after all the civilians they killed during their years of control, this is unfathomable to me.
It really does, take a lot to wrap your head around the situation here. Joining us right now to talk about this is the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. We're going to talk about much more, but Pete Hoekstra is here to talk about the Afghan elections. Pete, it's great to have you with us again.
Hey, great to be with you guys. Thank you.
And we appreciate you joining us by Skype today, Pete. Now, Hamid Karzai, a guy, when we were in Congress post 9/11, a lot of high hopes for Karzai as a leader in Afghanistan. Suffice it to say, it's been a mixed bag with Hamid Karzai. His reluctance to sign a status of forces agreement, but the presidential candidates, Pete, are talking as if they're going to the opposing presidential candidates disagree with Karzai. What is going to happen after this election? Will a status of forces agreement finally be drafted and ratified by a new Afghani government?
We've had discussions with at least one of the candidates, Abdullah, and his team. I think they've made it extremely clear that they want a status of forces agreement. They believe that it's necessary to keep some U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan to maintain, the hard-fought progress that we've achieved over the last 10 years. And so, either one of, I think, the two leading candidates will sign a status of force agreement.
Now, the Taliban, we heard there were going to be attacks. The fact that this election came off with, 7 million participating, and now they're looking to count the votes, and this is going to take a period of time. Do you expect to see Taliban attacks mounted against the tabulation centers in another effort to short-circuit this election?
Well, there's going to be lots of tabulation centers around the country. You can expect perhaps some isolated attacks, but I don't think there's going to be enough attacks against the tabulation centers to actually disrupt the vote counting. If the Taliban were going to have an impact on this election, it should have happened over the weekend when the people were voting, where they could have attacked, a lot of voting centers and actually caused a disruption. And, you had 60% of the Afghan voters were estimated to have come out and voted. That's a very impressive number. They should have tried, you would have thought they would have tried to drive that number down. They didn't.
Well, Pete, I'm sure if you did some public opinion polling on the term nation building in Afghanistan, it wouldn't rank very popular with the American people. And we get a lot of comments from our viewers talking about their desire to keep the U.S. now out of places like Afghanistan. That said, when you hear that Afghanistan is now going to have supposedly a democratic turnover of power without some sort of major civil war here, and again, tenuous at best at this time, doesn't that kind of, maybe I'm being naive here, but support the fact that there can be nation building still in this country? We can still promote democracy abroad?
I think, John, that's a little bit optimistic. The bottom line is the new president of Afghanistan is still going to be the president of Kabul. One of the things that has not happened over the last 10 years is that, we've not unified the country. It's a very diverse country. There's no infrastructure that connects Kabul to the rest of the country. To believe that, this country is now going to be a democracy that we can reflect and say, what, it's come a long way. Let's see exactly where we are in 36 months. We saw this in Iraq, that you had what appeared to be significant progress. This weekend was good. It was positive. But we really need to step back and see where we are in 36 months.
All right, so I'll temper my optimism a little bit.
And
Temper your optimism,
we are
that's
always
right.
dealing with the predominance of tribal rule in so many outlying areas of Afghanistan. Let's switch hot spots if we can right now, Pete. Return to the Ukraine. The situation there, Russia seizing government buildings. Now Ukrainian officials say they've seized back control of those buildings. Can you make some sense of what is transpiring in eastern Ukraine?
I don't think anybody can make sense of what's happening in eastern Ukraine. And, we keep moving over from Crimea into other parts of Ukraine. The bottom line is Putin wants to create confusion. He wants to disrupt the civil society in Ukraine. That's good for Putin. That's good for Russia. He's got his eyes on, taking other parts of the former Soviet Union, reintegrating them into the Russian bloc of influence. These disruptive, close to anarchy in parts of Ukraine, they further his objective. You're going to see this continue until some of these things actually fall more closely in alignment with the objectives of Putin and Russia.
And Pete, what we're seeing in eastern Ukraine, do you think this is something that Putin's directly involved in, kind of stoking the fire, so to speak, here? Or do you think this is something he's more or less just sitting back and watching happen happily, maybe destabilizing eastern Ukraine a little bit more to open up the door for him to move his troops in there?
I think those of us who have met with Putin, those of us who have watched his actions over the last number of years, I think, again, people who believe that he's not actively involved directing this, again, that's a naive standpoint. He has a clear vision. I think we fundamentally disagree with what he wants to accomplish. He has a clear vision. He's going to work at implementing that vision for that part of Europe and Asia. He's actively involved.
Pete Hoekstra, we'll have to leave it there as always, my old friend. We look forward to your expert analysis of all things dealing with intelligence and strife in the world. Pete, thanks for joining us again on America's Forum.
Thank you.
When I hear the whole thing about Putin, what always comes to mind is when Putin sees something, he wants it. How about Mr. Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots,
yeah, the
visiting
ring.
his Super Bowl ring? Putin gets it with his henchmen, and it's still in the possession of President Putin.
Hey, well, this is kind of testing the Germans and the other Europeans who said, they can only take so much more from Putin, and this seems to have his signature on it. How much more are they going to take?
Your signature, your comments, your turn coming up. You see the social media you can use to contact us. It is your turn. When we get back, we'll have your comments.